Conversations around the modernization theory has to do with the fact that countries like the United States of America, Europe, and other developed countries went through a process of development from the traditional through the industrial or industrialization period to modernization and then, of course, post-modernization. For Nigeria, we've had several models of development, notably the education hub or the technical hub, and of course the free trade zones. Recent feedbacks have shown that some of these models or structures and strategies of development has really not helped the country in terms of wealth creation, employment generation, and making the country to advance. And the reason being that those who are of the opinion that Nigeria should follow the modernization process like Europe, UK, America, and all of that, seems to forget the fact that the factors responsible for our development is not in our hands. It's in the hands of the developed countries like the United States of America, as a matter of fact, the Western world. When you look at some of those institutions that are in place, the Bretton Woods Institution, the IMF, the World Bank, and the Chatham House, and all of that, they really haven't helped the development of underdeveloped or developing countries. So what is the way out? For some analysts, we need to look inward and adopt homegrown technology for the country to move forward. Those who have adopted these have actually made giant strides. We can talk about China today, we can talk about India today, we can talk about several other countries. What is the way forward for Nigeria in its quest for development and advancement, exploring homegrown technology? I'm joined now by a technical expert, Reverend Ekoswai Lugard Michael. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, sir, and good morning.
Okay, let's get the conversation started here with Reverend Lugard. Many thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
Okay, now, we've always had this conversation that if Nigeria must move forward, Nigeria must develop, we must look homeward, look inward, look at what is possible at the home front for us to advance development. But the fact remains that some of the factors that engender development is not in our hands. There's no power, the funding process is clumsy, and it's fraught with corruption. So what is your model in exploring homegrown technology to advance development in this country?
Well, thank you for the privilege. In terms of industrialization or technological advancement for our country, you rightly mentioned that we should look inward. We should recognize and identify with ourselves, with our people, who we are and our capabilities. What do we have in the first place? At the end of the day, you find that from time, you find that Nigerians have their indigenous technology. They survived before the colonial masters. And when the Portuguese came to Benin Empire, they saw they were advanced better than the way they thought. So therefore, when talking about this advancement, we have people within our nation who are technical, who have the technical abilities, have the technology, but the point is that we have a missing link. We've not been able to harness what we have or identify with what we have. At the end of the day, you find that it's the pieces to a whole that makes about industrial development, creation of machines. Definitely, we find out that in Nigeria, there are Nigerians that are capable of fabricating machines in this country. And when you talk industrialization, it depends on machines. And the other word that you mentioned, the developed world, they will tell us the global best standards. But we are not talking of Nigerian best standards. They have gone far. They are using their standard to compel us to do what they have when they build their own structure and system, whereby we don't have those foundations. How do you build on a system that had no foundation? The foundation should be built on our people to sort for what we have and what we can do with it. And I can tell you a lot. The problem has been the parallel line that the people at the helm of affairs and those that are really artisans and technicians are on that parallel line, so they never meet. Until we recognize to converge, to say this is a problem identified and how we can do it. There's no rocket science about this. We are not reinventing any wheel. It's the value system and trust between the technicians and the government that is really lacking, what I call the missing link. So whatever you think about agribusiness, you can assure you that we can create minor machines like the Chinese did, like the Indians did. Let's start with that we are capable of doing and grow from there.
Okay, so where, in your opinion, is the starting point in this quest of advancing homegrown technology? Where should be the starting point?
The starting point is having to come together from the educational institution to the artisans in the street and the government. Let's think. We already know we have a problem. Problem of development, unemployment. These are problems, but the good news is that those problems are also source of wealth. If we can find solutions to them, we can create jobs. We can have economic growth, GDP will increase, IGRO will increase for the state. So therefore, it's the coming together of this sector to say, this is our issue. For instance, the agricultural sector. We have shifting cultivation and the traditional system of farming. That's why there's food insecurity in the country. What if the fabricators, the machine fabricators, can provide many machines that can do weeding, that can do plowing, the harrowing, and all these sort of minor things that are minor, like the Indians did, like the Chinese did. It will encourage our farming. And secondly, that the government is serious about off-taking. Because where there is supply and no demand, there will be a problem. We have to also create a demand where the market will be available. And the machine fabricators like of course, I'm the chairman of the Agricultural Machine Equipment Fabricators Association of Nigeria, Edo State chapter. Okay. We come in between the farmers, the investors that will create factories. We can build local factories. And the examples of a lot of local factories built by local technicians and technologists and engineers. So the convergence of these intellectuals from the school to the street artisan, the government, coming to a round table to say we can solve this problem. Therefore, we can actually start from there.
Fantastic. Let's talk about agriculture as a starting point. And I'm glad you said you had an association that is into fabrication and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What is the level of productivity in that regards, in bridging that gap? Because over time, there's always been concerns about the quality of our products, the quality of our production to meet demands, to meet the needs, particularly in the agricultural sector.
Well, thank you once again. I'll tell you there are different facets of this equation. First is the idea of the farmers having to improve in their cultivation or production or increase the size of the heritage of their farms. And they cannot do that manually. The cost of labor is expensive. It will hike in the cost of the produce later. So therefore, you employ machines. Where 5 people can work, a machine can take care of labor of 5 people. So therefore, if we involve micro machines or minor machines and giving it to the farmers as cluster, we form a farm cluster so that we'll be able to get in machines that all of them can go in and hire or use as a farm cluster, maybe a village or a clan or a district. A cluster is created for the farmers and where the machines are available, locally fabricated. The essence of locally fabricating is that it gives room to easy maintenance. It gives room to easy spare parts. It gives room to accessibility of the technicians to make repairs when needed, or to advise or educate the farmers on the usage of the machine, or like bringing expatriates to come, and when they go back, it gets no spare parts. So we can start from there. Then it comes to the sector of the fabricators. When there's demand and feedback from the customers, therefore we can improve in qualities. That's why there are different models of different machines. That is leveraging on the foreman and improving on the mistakes of the foreman product that was done. So therefore, there's a way out throughout this, and the government support, funding, and you talked about power. There should be availability of power. There may not be enough power to go around, but what if the government form a cluster where the energy is prioritized to those clusters for processing, for the farmers, for development of our rural communities? is the power. And those power, we can consult with our local engineers and technologists to say, fine, we have rivers. Why can't we convert them to hydropowers around the village clusters? We have solar. God has blessed us with the sun. Definitely we can improve on increasing more training of solar technicians to provide those solar energy in our rural communities. We have other source of reusing the wastage from agricultural product to generate energy. Okay. So those energy is the foundation of industrialization or technological advancement or modernization. And we prioritize energy in clusters. Yeah. And therefore, there we can increase and improve on our development in the rural community and within the technological area, and the government get more IGRs. Okay.
All right, Reverend Lugard, you've spoken about local fabrication of these machinery. So I'm wondering, why don't we have a lot of this already on board? What are some major challenges that this area faces? Because you've spoken about being in an association where this fabrication does happen. But why aren't we seeing more of this at the forefront of our agricultural sector?
Thank you. I think that's why I'm here. We have the technology locally, but I just said there have been a kind of neglect, a recognition, and the trust on our local abilities. So there have not been much investment into that. There have not been much interest. Like I sit here as the chairman of AMEFAN, that's Agricultural Machine Equipment Fabricators Association of Nigeria. I've not sat down with the government one day to discuss this fact, that this is what we can do, this is how we can create jobs, this is how we can create machine through the value chain. We can create hundreds of thousands of jobs that our youth are loitering the street without job, whereby the job is available. So the missing link is the point. They would have not been funding, it have individually been funded. In terms of technological advancement, you know there's R&D, research and development. There's no fund for research and development. There's no cohesion between the tertiary institution and the technicians and technologists in the street. So therefore, the solutions have not been provided to the problems. So it has been individual issues. It has not been a cooperative advancement or collective engagement to make sure that this advancement on a local technology is being done and machines are available to those that need them. So we are not lacking anything in this country. We are not lacking anything in this state. What we lack is the ability to harness what we have and converting them to solutions of our problems.
Okay, fantastic. What you make of the concerns that when people talk about seeking government support, we don't have the opportunity to know what they have been able to do on their own in terms of contributions. Let's take, for instance, fabrications of agricultural machines. If you're seeking government's help, what is the template for that help that you require? What have you been able to do to bring to the table to convince anybody that this is something that is doable, is workable, is practicable?
That is not far-fetched. I can categorically tell you that a lot of the entrepreneurs in the micro industries in agricultural processing of value addition dependent more on the local fabricated machines. Talk from the pepper grinding in the market locally. Cassava processing, majority locally. We talk about yam to flour processing locally. So these things are there to see. But the interest to see from those that leads us has been a problem. What is their interest? Have they called on these people, look, we want to create 100,000 jobs. We have the farmers here. We have the machine fabricators here. We have the government here. This job, how do we create it? If we get the farmers, the machine fabricators, the government on our side, or the investors, or the private sector say, okay, we are creating 100,000 jobs, but this is our problem. We want to make food available in the next 12 months. And we have off-taking. Who produces the machine? We. So if we are called upon, we'll get it done. So if you want to know more about the local technology and their impact, go to the rural fabricator. The cassava, the gari you eat today, none of the machine is imported. You go to the rural community, nobody's buying Chinese machines. It's the locally fabricated gari. I believe everyone here eat eba. If you do, you will know that that's a product of the local technology that the machine fabricators in this country and many more other areas.
Okay.
All right, so I would also want to know, I'm sure our viewers would want to know also, what efforts have really been made to reach out to the government to make them see that we have these facilities, we can actually home grow these things, we can create these machines, we can fabricate them, so invest in us. What processes have been made to reach out to the government and bodies that can actually invest?
Well, thank you once again. I would say I want to also congratulate His Excellency Senator Mondokpebolo, being the governor of ours, of the Edo State. There is a letter in his office right now requesting an audience from him. For weeks now, we've not gotten reply. Why did we have to do that? We did that so that we can get him to be notified of our abilities and what we can do. But we've not gotten a reply as we speak. I believe this is an opportunity to talk to the governor himself, call on us. We are able to create machines that can create more than 100,000 jobs through the agri value chain or agri-business. It's available. Edo State have 1,300,000, that's 1.3 million.
That's 1,300,000.
No, yes, 1,300,000 hectares for arable land.
Okay.
So therefore, if we decide to cultivate even 50% of this, we can create more than 100,000 jobs. And therefore, there will be food security. We could even export. We build a factory to process them, to add value, not sending out raw materials. And our farmers will be engaged. Our rural communities will be developed so that this rural-urban migration will be reduced. Migration across the desert to the Mediterranean, I prefer to die rather than staying here, will be reduced. These are just no rocket sciences. Yeah. This is what we can do. Okay. And this is possible.
Now, let me just take you on one point. You mentioned the agric processing equipment we see in the rural community, particularly the one for cassava. Yeah. You also mentioned another one, I can't remember now.
If you talk plantain processing.
Yes. Now, but there are usually two component parts. Let's take the cassava meal, for example. Yeah. You have two component parts. You have the components where the milled cassava comes out. You have something like a generator that uses diesel, petrol, as the case may be. Yeah. Was that component part made? Is that made locally? Or because what we have is that these are generators from China, from Taiwan, from UK and all of that. And then we fabricate these component parts. So give me a clarification on that.
Okay, let me tell you. The world has grown to the point that we are assembling. Okay. Whether in America, they could be buying engine from China. Whether Chinese, they could be buying engine from America. The world is interwoven.
So what's the level of contribution in terms of
the mechanical part,
percentage?
We're talking about 65–70% of the machine. The rest are maybe collected parts from, like you just mentioned, the diesel engine, maybe the other parts, minor like bearings and all the rest of them that will be there. But at least we can go as far as 70%. So if we do that across the board, even the assembling of vehicles, we go to 70%. That's all the structural work, the upholstery work, the painting work, all the electrical work are locally fabricated. We can get engine from China. Therefore, we'll have local vehicles for the rural communities to convey. That's what I'm saying. We can get those things done. Even in America, they import. That's why there's this trade war between China and America. It even involves spare parts and technological aspect. You can see your telephone, the battery may not even come from where it is produced. It's produced somewhere else and it's assembled somewhere else and it has a brand name somewhere else. That is the way the world is today. So we can do the same. If we can get 65–70%, you imagine the lot of job that we can create across the board. That's it.
Okay. Have you heard of, I think there's a federal government agency that encapsulates some of these things. I just want to know from you, what is the level of engagement at the federal level? We have funding agencies. We have, for example, the Technology Incubation Agency or something. So I don't know what is the level of engagement, to drive these visions.
When you talk about the incubation and the federal government engagement, I had the opportunity to be visited by one of these agencies, the automobile stuff of it. they were thinking they would reach me back. I've been waiting. And I have not received any message. And when you talk about the incubation,
yes,
that is where we also gotten it wrong. That's the foundation of technological advancement, which involve raw talent, people from the universities, a place they can bring their project to and make it a product that can be invested upon and become commercially viable.
Okay.
But we don't have the one we have, the technological incubation center we have in Cypress Road. You can go and see. I don't know if the state even have one. That should be federal. So what we are clamoring for, let's have a place where the universities students can come in and interact with us. They are young brains. Their project should not be on paper. Their project should provide solution to the problem in the society, where we can incubate those ideas and see the most viable and bring them to a product. And where we can get that done is the interaction between us, those in the school, the engineers which learn theoretical and research learning, which they do in the tertiary institution, then come to us technologically, then we can bring them to product. And if it's viable, it becomes a commercial product, and people are getting engaged and employed.
Okay. On the final note, before we let you go, what are your key recommendations to ensure we leverage on this homegrown technology to advance development of our economy, particularly against the background of my earlier statements that there is a feeling that for a country to develop, you must go through the route of the US, UK, and all of that. But we know that today, you really don't need to do a new thing. All that needs to be done has been done. You just need to leverage on what has been done. So what's your key recommendation?
Well, what I'll say is that we should come together, recognizing the diverse problems that we have, and believe in ourselves that these problems, that we can solve them. And the only way we can solve them, there's no man that's an island. It's calling on different sectors to come together and identify the particular problem and solve it, especially in the agri-business. Okay. I'm always referring to that because China grew from there. India grew from there. They took care of food and the needs of the people and add value to them, and employment were created. In Edo State, I can tell you can create more than 100,000 jobs from the agri-business today. And looking inward to solve our problem, I'll give you, for instance, if you permit me, I'll tell you during COVID was a time we had a lot of lessons. When there was no plane flying, no importation, we survived. And I'll tell you in particular what our machine fabricators contributed during COVID-19. COVID-19. It happened that there was no flight to Benin Airport. There was only Abuja, Lagos then. Then someone came from the Benin Airport and said, look, we have a problem. The FAA, Federal Airport Authority, is coming to the Benin Airport. And if they don't find a machine that can prevent COVID, that they will not approve the airport for the place to come in. Okay. They gave us, in 2 weeks, we fabricated a machine that would discharge sanitizer, soap, and water.
Simultaneously?
Simultaneously. You just only use the pedal. You don't touch. So we did it in 2 weeks. And if you go to Benin Airport departure area, then you find one with ESG head Benin to show that it was produced in Benin. It was huge there. We did it. And when the FAA came, they gave 100% approval to Benin Airport. The plane started flying in. We provide the solution. Okay. Same thing I want to say, that every other problem can also be solved in the same way. Thank God to the machine fabricators, the flights start coming to Benin. It became the third airport in Nigeria that planes were flying in. It was our work. So we can also provide solution in the agricultural area to provide food security for the state. All we ask is the governor today, please, if it gets to you, call on me, on my group. We can find solution locally to industrialization.
Thank you very much, Reverend Lugard. Mike, it's a delight to have you join us on the show. Some of the useful insights that you brought to bear on the conversation. There is no gainsaying the fact that if we must grow, if we must develop, if we must advance, we don't need to go through the routes of US, UK, the Western world, leveraging on the conversation of the modernization theory. Well, they are now in the postmodern era. Where are we today? We're still looking at post-colonial era, and where has that taken us to? Against the background that no matter how hard we try as a nation, as a country, and as a continent, the factors of production, the odds seems to be against us, because we need their technology, we need their funding, we need everything. But we need to look inward. If we look inward and decide to do some of the recommendations that Reverend Lugard has talked about, I'm sure we'll have a place in history in terms of developing our economy, beginning with massive food production to reduce the hunger that we have in our nation today.